Hello, it's great to have all of you back here with us. In the series entitled Karma, Choice and Destiny, we are looking at various topics that are of interest to those who are on a spiritual path. And it is my pleasure to be interviewing Sister Denise from the Brahma Kumaris. Hi, and welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
So, catharsis and healing. Catharsis is actually a term that's more related to the field of psychology.
Psychology and also drama.
How would you say it's relevant to our topic and within the realm of spirituality?
Well, catharsis is also something that's very much part of spiritual practice, because you need to reach a certain point where you can cross over a peak or a barrier in order for the healing to take place. So catharsis is very much part of the spiritual practice. But as I've said before, spiritual practice and psychological work has to converge, and catharsis is one of those areas where they come together.
Does one consciously set about to achieving catharsis, or does it happen spontaneously, naturally?
I think it happens spontaneously and naturally, and in two ways. The barrier that you have to cross, the wall that you have to break down, is the wall of ego. And when you do very intense yoga, one of the consequences is that it breaks that boundary between yourself consciously, your conscious mind, and your subconscious. And it causes everything that is hidden to become visible. And that's very big catharsis, because you have to then face everything. Now, there are certain people who will come into your life at the right moment who seem to have the knack of pressing your buttons in such a way that they just break everything open and expose your ego mask for what it is. And that is cathartic too.
Yeah, we don't necessarily like these people now, do we?
That's why we don't plan for it, but it's spontaneous and natural. They come when they have to come. It's maybe part of destiny. From karma angle and from choice angle, you would say to yourself, I wish to break through to whatever is the next level. And by having such a thought, you're bringing on whatever is needed to bring you to that cathartic moment, cross over that barrier, and then the healing can occur.
I can't help but wonder that when you speak of catharsis, your approach, in terms of what I just gleaned from your answer, is intellectual. And you are obviously an intellectual. I'm now wondering about many who are on the spiritual path who are not intellectual and by no means stupid, but more heart people. There are many simple, beautiful, spiritual people. Not intellectual, simple. And by simple, I don't mean a euphemism for stupid. Will they also undergo this if their approach is different?
Yeah, I don't think it matters what the approach is. The need and the relationship between catharsis and healing is across the board. Intellectual, simple, educated, more ancient type of people, more scientific, modern type of people, whatever it is, there's an ego barrier in there somewhere, and crossing it is a cathartic process.
Okay, so what you are saying is every single human being on the planet has an ego, a massive one.
Well, there are different amounts of massiveness.
But everyone has an ego.
ego in the sense that all the people in the world are in the same time period, which we call the Iron Age, or the Kali Yuga, it's also been called, the Dark Age. And it is the age where people are spiritually depleted. Anyone who's spiritually depleted develops an ego. It comes with the territory. That's why.
So what you are saying is the false self, which is ego, is a barrier to furthering my spiritual goals?
Yeah, the whole point of spiritual practice and all the various things that you do is to arrive at the destruction of this carapace, this mask, which doesn't serve a purpose once you have other information. So you need to bring it down. But this is your problem. This is what you hide behind. This is what keeps you away from who you really are. This is why it's called false ego, in opposition with the term pure pride or self-honor, you know, where you really are who you are and you are in your power.
The identity of a human being is the fact that they're a soul, a point of light. And now we've become human beings who believe that we are what we see in the mirror. Is that what needs to be broken together with all the baggage that we've accumulated? Or is it more than that?
Well, that's on the grossest of all gross levels, but there are many, many levels of it, and most of them very subtle, you know. So maybe for some people who are very, very basic, simple, it's just that level, but mostly it's complex. You know, in your subconscious is where your sin resides. In your subconscious is where your trauma resides, and all of these bad things you have done and bad things that were done to you, they all get mixed up and they drive how you operate. And then all of this gets covered over by this mask of ego, so you are disconnected from yourself. You need to reconnect with yourself and to realize just how extreme it has become, and that realization is cathartic. It's very difficult for a person to see their own ego. And when you all of a sudden are faced with it, either through another person or through your meditation or through circumstances, you have to go through that, because it's like losing face. It very often will bring up an immense wave of pain, and you have to navigate that and get across it. And this is part of the cathartic process, and out of which the healing comes. And it may be different for different people, but the elements are pretty much the same, I think. Yeah. Because, you know, on another occasion you asked, what do you do with your pain? And your pain is buried, so you have to disinter it and face it and move through it. And the circumstances that make that possible are cathartic. And the consequences are you get a healing.
Okay, so tell us more about the healing. And I ask this question against the backdrop of many individuals who've suffered the most atrocious things: intense pain, intense trauma, intense humiliation of the physical, emotional, sexual kind. How does one come back from that? Can one fully come back from that?
I think it's going to depend on the individual, how strong the spirit is. Definitely in the extreme cases that you are speaking about, they will need medical help, they will need psychological help. And once they have completed their psychological work, it may or may not open up their spiritual part. whether they're doing it through psychological work or a convergence of psychological and spiritual, it will lead toward a catharsis, and there will be not necessarily just a healing, but there'll be several occasions where bits of healing happen, because I think it's not just a one-time thing. The material that is very negative in your subconscious cannot be sorted out in one go. It's too much. So a little at a time comes up, little catharsis, which all of them seem like really big and the last one, but it never is. There's more always. And gradually you become lighter, you become freer, and your subconscious becomes clean. And then we say, when it's totally clean, that you are karma teat. That means there is no further karmic account left to settle. So on the one hand, you're finishing the old karma. On the other hand, you are performing pure karma, not adding to the negative karma. And the whole process of spiritual work is a healing at the deepest level of the soul. And it's also a restoration of the soul to its initial perfection.
What is the role of the divine in all of this? Does he observe you going through this process, or does he help?
Well, I would say the divine is the instigator.
Of the catharsis?
Yeah.
How so?
You know, the catharsis is brought on by the energy of sin, the dark energy, even some, you could call it evil force, and the force of God meeting, and they sort of destroy each other. Of course, you can't destroy God, but it's a very destructive process. That's why it's catharsis. But when you're destroying evil, it's like garbage, you know. If you incinerate garbage, there's a big fire, you know, and afterwards there's no more garbage. But then you have to have a fire. So the catharsis is the fire that's ignited by the energy of God hitting the energy of negativity, and it burns. And this is why it is said that you must burn your sins, because it's better if you get the energy of God to burn your sins, and you just invite that, and then you are healed bit by bit. Because if you burn everything all at once, you probably burn in the process too much, you know. So there are safety mechanisms, kind of divine safety mechanisms, that you can only, or you will only have to deal with what you can deal with. You may say, no, I can't deal with this, it's too much, but it is within your range. Maybe you don't agree with that, but you can still get through it. If it's really out of your range, it won't come to you.
This entire process sounds highly unpleasant. Why would somebody do this voluntarily? For what reason?
I don't think you voluntarily go into it with the thought that this is going to happen unless you're very clued in. But, you know, it happens so often. A person goes to the doctor says, sorry to tell you, you're diagnosed with cancer. You have this option. You could do chemo, you could do radiation, you could do this or that, whatever it is. And in the previous times, these cancer therapies were so atrocious that they would not like the doctor, because they would tell him that your medication is worse than the cancer. And nowadays the medication is much less aggressive, so that you don't get that complaint so much. But in previous times it was really like that. And I think that when a person comes into or decides to embark on a practice of spirituality, they don't know what it entails. They might say, oh, it would be nice if I could be healed, but they don't know what from. In this practice, you're looking at sorting out the many, 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 many reincarnations of the soul, and a lot of accumulation, not just what happened in this life, but all of your lives, you see. And so it's a big thing, because the cycle, one cycle is finishing, another cycle is starting. And so when you start a new cycle, you want to be what we call karma teat. And so karma teat means whatever your karmic accumulation has been over however many lives, all of that needs to be cleared, because at the end of a cycle, you finish everything. It's like an audit, you know. And then you finish, pay your taxes, as it were, and you start fresh, clean, new. This is the idea. As you progress in your spiritual practice, you're getting more and more strength, you're getting little tests and things getting settled here and there. You begin to get the picture that spiritual practice includes is finishing off outstanding karmic debts. And slowly, slowly, as they come up, you finish them, and sometimes a very big one will come up, and you make a huge step forward. You have a big healing that is there, you know. And for each one, the path is different. It's not like going on the freeway. It's a sometimes bumpy road, sometimes you're going uphill, sometimes downhill, but eventually you get to the top of the mountain.
Walk us through how one manages one's egoistic pulls or tendencies through all of this. Won't your ego block you at every step?
Of course your ego will block you at every step, but you have to be having a decision that I choose to get past my ego. I choose to call upon, to invoke whatever the powers that be are to collaborate with me to destroy my ego at any cost. I will pay any price to be free. And if that's your goal, okay, that's the contract. Not everybody will make a statement like that to the universe, but some people will, in which case this is how they go. You know, everyone will handle this differently. Some people, they just want a little bit of love. They'll go that way. Some people have a big baggage of sin, some people not. Some people are really powerful souls, some people not. It is so difficult to pinpoint and identify exactly what the capacity of a person is until they start doing their spiritual practice, and then you start to see what the capacity is. So it's a discovery along the way, discovery.
The journey of healing is a I'm thinking of this expression, the path to hell was paved with good intentions. That expression comes to mind. So the journey of healing is something that one cannot afford to be naive about, can one?
I think that's absolutely true. Naivety does have no place in a spiritual practice. But you may start off naive and you have to get free from it. There's so many things that you have to get free from. So many things. You have to grow. You have to grow up. You have to become mature. You have to come into your power. You have to drop your stupidity. So many things.
You know, Sister Denise, in the course of life, we tend to put things and people into categories. And when one embarks on a spiritual journey, something may happen which we say, or define rather, as this situation is wrong. Something's wrong here. This person shouldn't have said that to me. This should not have happened. Can a situation or person behave in a wrong way, in inverted commas, or is there something for us to learn?
When a person behaves in a so-called wrong way, it depends what you mean by wrong. There are some situations where a very high-level yogi will interact with a relatively new student and say something or do something that that new student, out of their ego, really doesn't appreciate, and they will say that's wrong. Actually, it's not wrong, but it does take the ego down, which is a good thing. But that person's ego doesn't want to be taken down, so the person defines it as something wrong. So that's one type of wrong thing. Then there's other type of wrong things which are actually wrong, but the lesson there is it's none of your business. Don't go into it. Making comments about other people's thing, that's not your job. Your job, in this case, is to get on with your own work and be a detached observer and don't poke your nose where it doesn't belong. You have to learn that lesson. So circumstances may be such, like almost it's neutral, but in relationship with the particular spiritual practitioner, that practitioner has to detect what is the lesson in this situation. And if they are responding to it by saying this is wrong, then you have to go into a lot more detail. Why are they saying this is wrong? What's going on here? What lesson are they having to learn, etc., etc. And so I don't think that those so-called wrong things are going to be cathartic, but something that someone who's doing something right, but which is perceived as wrong, that will be cathartic.
I am looking at the situation that happens to every person on a spiritual journey, where you believe that you're acting out of love when your actions are actually motivated by attachment, where you believe that you're being assertive, but you are in fact angry. Okay? You may not see it, but the other person does. So how do we learn to see?
You remember in other episodes, I was talking about how God relates to you always correctly. You may not relate correctly, but God always relates very correctly and reciprocally. And once you really develop your spiritual practice and you move ahead and you become advanced, you can even really start behaving correctly and accurately in relation with other people. And this accurate behavior will cause a person to have to face something, or it can be cathartic, and then it will get this barrier to get crossed over. So when you're in relation, you're doing negative behavior, the other one is doing negative behavior, that just creates more karmic bondage, so that's not really cathartic.
I'm just wondering how one can deepen one's relationship with the divine so that one can take optimal benefit from him, her, and heal fully.
I think it's not really a question of how. The spiritual practice of Raja Yoga is fairly clearly laid out. Do this, have these regular practices, etc. And along the way, something comes up, circumstances arise, persist for a while, and then they subside. This is the law. And these circumstances become instrumental for you to learn a lesson, or to give you a shock, or a boost, or something, and then you move forward. So it's not really a matter of how, but it's a matter of trying to develop skills so that as these circumstances or people coming into your life, as they appear, you're able to respond, taking best advantage. And each of these circumstances is like a rehearsal for what's coming next. So you keep refining your skills. by these situations. Yeah.
Okay, that's all we have time for today, so we have to bring this episode to a close. Thank you for what you shared. So there you go, catharsis and healing. I do hope that those of you who are on a spiritual journey have taken full benefit from what Sister Denise had shared today. And I also hope that you are able to understand the intricacies of what spirituality entails. And I do wish you everything of the best in your healing as well. Take care, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.